This is ThinkTech Hawaii. Community matters here.
Hello and welcome to It Never Got Quiet. I'm your host, Vic Kraft. We're a half-hour program about Hawaiian veterans of the Vietnam War. In a memorandum dated September 11, 2017, the Veterans Affairs Assistant Deputy Undersecretary for Health Clinical Operations issued a warning to various departments of the VA healthcare network about the possibility of veterans being triggered by the recent Ken Burns documentary on the Vietnam War. Although it does not elaborate or specify what constitutes triggered, the meaning is implied. Additionally, the statistics for veteran suicides for 2016 were also released this month. The figure continues to be 18 to 22 veterans per day committing suicide on a nationwide basis. Today, we are departing from our normal conversation with a veteran from the Vietnam War, and we will be speaking with a veteran from another war. Our guest today is Ed DeGuzman. Ed grew up in Honolulu, graduating from Radford High School. He enlisted in the Marine Corps Reserves, and taking advantage of the state of Hawaii's tuition waiver program for active reservists and Guard members, he attended the University of Hawaii at Manoa. He received his degree in history and was commissioned as a second lieutenant. Ed served in Operation Desert Storm as an artillery officer. He returned to Honolulu in 1991 in the beginning of his career with the Department of Veterans Affairs. Ed held a number of positions in the VA before his present post as director of the West Oahu Vet Center. Ed and his staff have assisted countless veterans in finding their path through the maze of government bureaucracy so that they may improve their circumstances and carry on with their lives. He has introduced a number of innovative programs that have been of great benefit not just to older veterans, but to the current crop of returning veterans. Aloha, and welcome, Ed, to our program.
Hello, Vic. Thank you for having me.
I'm very happy. First of all, I'd like to thank you personally, along with a lot of the other folks that you've helped along, and just thank you, and you have our gratitude. I really appreciate that.
Thank you for letting me, allowing me.
It's an honor having you here. Just out of curiosity, one of the things that gets me is, it was credited by Mark Twain that Benjamin Disraeli said it before he did, but Mark Twain was quoted as saying, there are lies, damn lies, and statistics. And I was just kind of curious about this memo that I love the Assistant Deputy Undersecretary. I mean, I don't know what level of management that is, but putting this thing out and basically saying, guess what, guys, heads up.
I didn't really get the chance to read it in detail, but I see that a lot of effort was put into it. And like you said, the unfortunate thing about statistics is it depends on the data that's collected. I think you and I have had that conversation. This is based on information that the VA has. But I'm afraid that it may be it doesn't tell the whole story. I mean, it doesn't take in account, for example, accidents that happen, motor vehicle accidents, motorcycle accidents. After deployments, there's been a rash of accidents. And who knows what caused those accidents. So it's a pretty detailed study. A lot of effort was put into it, but I'm afraid as an individual reading not only that study but other studies, it may not be as accurate as one would like.
So essentially what you're saying is that the VA can only account for those people that are actually a part of their system, that are being accounted for in their system. As you said, you get a spike in accidents, DUIs, and various other things after a deployment, and some of it could be suicidal, some of it could be accidental.
Correct, and I'm not a statistician, but I do hear the anecdotes. I talk to the people who are dealing with the readjustment, and that's what we do. We do readjustment counseling for our veterans. And you know, I was asked before by another journalist, like, what does the Vet Center do? We want to ensure, we're preventative. We want to ensure that the veterans and family members who are dealing with the readjustment of the multiple deployments, and also the current Ken Burns documentary, have a place to go where they can address in a safe environment the issues that they're dealing with.
So this is both active duty and also veterans.
For the Vet Center program, for the Veterans Affairs, we are one of the few programs that are authorized by Congress to deal with or be able to see active duty members. And yes, we do see veterans, we do see active duty members and family members of active duty and veterans.
Should a veteran, or pardon me, an active duty member be concerned with the release of data to his unit or to whatever branch of service they're in?
I guess what you're saying is, do they need to check in with their unit? Is that the question?
What kind of competency or confidence, or not confidence?
Confidentiality?
Yeah, confidentiality.
That is the advantage that we have over, for example, a military provider. They can self-refer. An active duty member does not have to go to his chain of command. On his off-duty time, he can go to a vet center. Here in Oahu, we have Honolulu Vet Center and the West Oahu Vet Center, and they can contact us. And then that way, they don't have to report to their chain of command that they're dealing with some issues. And hopefully, maybe perhaps prevent the problems that they may encounter if they do something not within the UCMJ, Uniform Code of Military Justice. They don't have to have a command referral, in other words. So that's an advantage that the Vet Center program has.
Can you kind of walk us through, let's say a veteran walks through your door at the vet center. What's the process? What we want to do is, as soon as anyone comes into our office, veteran, family member, or what have you, active duty soldier, active duty Marine, first thing we'll do is, how can we help you? And then go from there. And our center, although lightly manned, we don't have that many people, we're a small team. We want to address what the individual's concerns are. It may not be a program or a question that our center can address, but at least we'll find out for them where they can go to. We also refer to non-VA organizations. We work with, and we partner with, I guess the military calls it non-government offices or non-profits. And because, you know, the VA and the Vet Center program cannot do it by itself. It has to rely on community providers. And we work as a team with those providers. So as a veteran walking in your doors, is there anything I should be bringing with me?
As a minimum, if they have a proof of service, the military, most veterans know what a DD-214 is. World War II veterans don't know what that is because DD stands for Department of Defense. The World War II veterans have to bring in their old, if they have it, their old discharge papers. The War Department 5455, I believe the form number is. But if they don't have that, because a lot of veterans, due to circumstances like their ex-wife burned their personal goods, which happens a lot, we will help them obtain those records from the archives.
Okay. So I think you're talking about the archives in St. Louis?
Correct.
Yeah, in spite of the fire that occurred there?
Yeah, the alleged fire. No, I've been to St. Louis, and those a lot of the records were damaged from the water damage, but they were recovered. A lot of them were recovered.
Oh. Okay. Who's eligible for veterans benefits? I mean, I've run into guys who've had bad conduct discharges or general discharges and have felt that, well, no, it's not for me. I can't apply or get any of the benefits from the Veterans Affairs. because I've had a BCD. What about that? I mean, is it?
Good question. In fact, I've had veterans who served 30 years who feel they're not a veteran. It's education. A lot of the what I suggest, anyone who served in uniform, even reservists and National Guard members, ask. We can't answer the question if you don't ask us. And for veterans with other than honorable and bad conduct discharges, seek our assistance. Let us find out for you. We may not be the agency or organization that can help you, but we have the information that can tell you how to go about going to the Board of Correction of the military branch that you served with to do an upgrade. It's not as easy. It's not an easy process, but it's not impossible either. Also, even if you have a bad paper, what we call, meaning other than honorable, we've had successes helping veterans because the VA does its own review of an individual's record. So, for example, let's say you have a veteran of recent conflicts who's had multiple deployments, and the last conflict he had an other than honorable, he or she would still be eligible for VA benefits because of this prior enlistments. A lot of veterans don't know that. And I've encountered veterans where even though they had an honorable service, they got in trouble after, and they were incarcerated. And I encountered a veteran who felt that because he was incarcerated for a civilian offense, he would not be eligible for VA benefits because somebody told him. And unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation that's going around. The best thing to do is ask, and then from there, let us find out for you. And again, I want to thank you, Vic, for bringing me here, because a lot of the people that doesn't know about it are the surviving spouses of veterans. A lot of them are out there not realizing that they may be eligible for benefits from the VA.
Yeah, I think that an awful lot of people, as you say, these surviving spouses or family members are unaware of what's available to them.
Yeah.
And some of the things that carry through, for instance, I know in my case, being on the Agent Orange registry, we're monitored and going through testing and making sure that we still have a healthy body, and but it also carries through to my children, that anything such as certain varieties of cancer are also covered.
For Agent Orange related conditions, for now, for male veterans, it's only spina bifida. If a child of a Vietnam veteran has developed spina bifida, then they can then be eligible. But majority of veterans, child defects and all that, it's only for a female Vietnam veteran that would cover. But going back to what the Vet Center does and readjustment counseling, our job, readjustment counseling, is to help veterans returning home from a combat theater and assist them and our brothers and fathers and uncles, really, because they're us, deal with the changes, because what they left is not what they're coming back to. And also they themselves have changed. In addition to the veterans of combat operations and conflicts, we also are authorized to help veterans who were harassed or attacked and what we call experienced military sexual trauma. And also we were also expanded our eligibility to providers, mental health providers, psychologists, psychiatrists, and medical personnel who's dealing with the people coming back. That's an interesting eligibility. And we had talked about active duty personnel, but also interestingly enough, now with the modern 21st century, we have veterans who aren't in a combat theater, but they're dealing with combat trauma from operating UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles. And that's an interesting situation in itself.
I know that I think it was the Air Force that denied some of the operators combat ribbons, even though they were operating from Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada and running their UAVs over Afghanistan and Iraq. And sorry, they're not going to get the ribbons for overseas service.
They may not get a combat ribbon, but they'll definitely get assistance from us.
That's great.
Another thing that I want to expand on, and that you mentioned, is the veterans who dealt with I'm sorry, lost my thought there for
That's
a minute.
okay. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll take a break here
Yeah, thank you.
for about a minute so that Ed can grab his
Yeah,
thoughts.
yeah. Thanks.
And we'll be right back after these.
This is ThinkTech Hawaii, raising public awareness.
My friend, Mother, what big eyes you have.
She said, all the better to see you with, my dear.
That's the wolf. What are you doing?
Okay, pause.
Research says reading from birth accelerates the baby's brain development.
And you're doing that now?
Oh, yeah, this is the starting line.
Push.
When this is over, you're dead.
Read aloud 15 minutes. Every child, every parent, every day.
Hello, I'm Helen Dora Hayden, the host of Voice of the Veteran, seen here live every Thursday afternoon at 1 p.m. on ThinkTech Hawaii. As a fellow veteran and veterans advocate with over 23 years experience serving veterans, active duty, and family members, I hope to educate everyone on benefits and accessibility services by inviting professionals in the field to appear on the show. In addition, I hope to plan on inviting guest veterans to talk about their concerns and possibly offer solutions. As we navigate and work together through issues, we can all benefit. Please join me every Thursday at 1 p.m. for the Voice of the Veteran. Aloha!
Thank you, and welcome back to It Never Got Quiet. We're here speaking with our guest today, Ed DeGuzman, who's the director of the West Oahu Vet Center. We went away for a break here to try to regain our thoughts, and we still have lost that train of thought, but we'll probably get around to it at some point in time. Some of the benefits that are available to the veterans, I think we're going to get into this question a little bit deeper, but it seems to me that there are an awful lot of folks out there. You had mentioned some people that, even though they had served 20-some years or 30 years, don't believe themselves to be veterans. There are two questions here, and I know it's kind of difficult, but you have folks who spent their entire career in the service and never saw combat. They don't feel that they're veterans, but yet they do qualify as veterans.
Right.
There are also some people who were in combat but felt that they really didn't qualify either because they didn't see the really rough stuff, like some of the guys that we see in the Ken Burns documentary. What's available to both those that were non-combat and also combat related, or is there any difference between the two?
That's a pretty difficult question to answer in the limited time that we have, but what I'll try to do is summarize it real quick. The best thing to do is ask. You'll find that a veteran who may have seen a lot of combat may not be, may be reluctant to seek any medical care or any, because they were successful. Or they were actually, some of them might even be told they're overqualified, which is interesting because of their income. Because the VA has the Veterans Health Administration, which handles the clinical side, for medical treatment, and then you got the Veterans Benefit Administration, who handles compensation and pension. They operate differently, but they use each other's information to determine, make their own determination. So each case is different, and we talked about how veterans with other than honorable discharges can receive benefits, and then you have a veteran who was in combat who might be told, no, you don't have any benefits, because he may not have the condition that determines that he has a diagnosable condition. So it's a difficult question to answer, but I'll tell you is that the best thing to do is ask. A lot of veterans and family members don't realize that the VA has a lot of programs out there, and the hard part is weeding through the different programs and what the eligibilities are, and that's why and I'm here. And the reason for this with the Ken Burns for the Vietnam veterans is similar to what happened when I first started with the VA, when the Saving Private Ryan came out. A lot of the World War II veterans who did not know they were aware of VA came out. and I witnessed it. I was there.
So this essentially is kind of acting like your advertising.
Correct.
And which is another thing that I want to get to as far as what's available on the neighbor islands. I mean, I know that there are vet sitters besides the two here.
Right. Yeah, there's each island has a vet center. In fact, the Big Island has two, the Kona and Hilo vet centers. And I encourage veterans who have any questions to go to those vet centers. Some of them are located to what the medical side calls community-based outpatient clinics. They're co-located. So if they have any issues as far as medical assistance, not only will they get counseling from the vet center, then they can go and register with the medical facility that's co-located with them.
You also have the mobile vet sitter, and I know that through the graces of local people, it has been transported to the other islands.
Can I say the company that transports?
Well, go for it.
Young Brothers. Thanks to Young Brothers community program, we were able, since 2012, transport the mobile vet center to the other islands. In fact, in October, we're going to send it to Maui in time for the Maui fair.
At their cost, by the way, the Young Brothers, not at taxpayer dollars.
Correct. We just have to pay the minimum wharfage fees, but that's minimal compared to the actual cost of transporting that vehicle. And we've been very successful in getting veterans who otherwise would not have known about VA and what's available. A lot of times the people we encounter have had bad experiences, not only from the military, but when they sought help from the VA, they were basically given the not so very good treatment.
Well, from personal experience, I have experienced what you have done for me and for an awful lot of the other guys that have gone through your doors. This is where the rubber meets the road, the vet centers. And it's probably one of the better things that was set up by the Veterans Affairs, or Department of Veterans Affairs. And I think it was it Max Cleland?
Senator, then Secretary Max Cleland,
and
who's a triple amputee himself.
He was also in one of Ken Burns last night. He was being interviewed. But we have to hand it to him as far as getting this out and getting in contact with the vets. And that, I think, is one of the toughest things that we have to do as far as getting people to come into this and see this, see what you guys are doing. All combat veterans share a similar condition, and it's undetectable in many ways. It's detectable to people outside of them, and they see it in the behavior. It generally manifests itself probably in violent ways or short tempers or things of that nature. We call it PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder. What is your advice to combat veterans who feel that they're okay? There's nothing wrong with them. I don't need anything. What would you suggest that they do? How do you go about testing yourself to make sure that you don't have this disorder?
Very good question, because I've had veterans who wish they didn't even never heard of the word or acronym PTSD. But every veteran who comes from combat, they have the 3 letters in their mind: Whiskey, Tango, Foxtrot. And they don't know where to go, what to do, how to answer that. Best advice, I think one of your guest panelists said, talk to other veterans.
Yes.
That's the advantage that we have at the Vet Center and Readjustment Counseling Services, is that we have veterans working for the VA. We have veterans who were there and who can understand what maybe perhaps similar circumstances, similar experiences. And from there, we go from there. But have that conversation. Also, with the limited time that we have left, I want to leave some acronyms. You know, in the military, we have a lot of acronyms. This acronym was shared during a directors, team leaders conference for other Vet Center team leaders and directors. And essentially, first one is the 3 A's of post-traumatic stress. The 3 A's is anger. Actually, it's anxiety, then anger, then leads to being alone. That's a test. If the veteran is by himself, he alienated himself from from his family, from his coworkers, that can tell you something. That's the 3 A's. The other one is SAD, S-A-D, suppress, avoid, deny. And that people with PTSD are experts in that. The last one is the 3 T's, timing, timing, timing. Not everyone's going to show up at the same time.
Yeah.
I still have veterans from Vietnam era that just coming in now. I've had Korean War veterans who just show up, but lately, they're like MacArthur said, old soldiers never die; they just fade away.
And I want to thank you for being in here and talking to us today and letting us know what's available from your end. You guys do a lot of great work, and I want to thank you.
Thank you for having me here.
I want to thank Mr. DeGuzman for appearing here today and providing us with some vital information on the programs available to veterans. I would also like to thank ThinkTech Hawaii for allowing me to be a part of their family. Many people have said that we have too long ignored a war that divided this nation almost as severely as the Civil War did 100 years before. Yet we remain a divided nation in so many ways. I have a friend in Alberta, Canada, who is a psychologist. Just before our national elections last year, I asked him what he thought of our political rite of passage. His observation was he believed we were pissed off and didn't know why. Could the trauma of Vietnam have had something to do with this? We have buried the war in our subconscious, so deep that we haven't even properly taught its history to our younger generations, until now. We don't know how to express ourselves anymore. Our faith and trust in our institutions has faltered. The number of people participating in the electoral process should be a key indicator. We seem to rely on violence and confrontation more than the rule of law to settle disputes. How have we come to this point in our history? Perhaps all the distress we experienced as a nation during the Vietnam War has left its mark. When the draft was in operation, those families who had members in uniform became much more engaged in the political process. It has been expressed that the North Vietnam played to that audience. It may have helped as people such as Walter Cronkite became skeptics, echoing the feelings that were beginning to prevail. Could public pressure have been a factor in our subsequent withdrawal? My co-author and I wrote a book about Hawaii and how it should fare should it become an independent nation once more. In its epilogue, we wrote something akin to this. Governments are inherently amoral. Their chief concern is their own survival. If democracy is to survive and prosper, it requires inclusion at all levels. What is stated in word must be carried out in deed. No one person or entity is above the law. We must be students of history, and good ones at that. The author Robert Heinlein once wrote that politics are as important as our next heartbeat. The Vietnam War has been called a proxy war. The Russians of the Soviet Union had no need to commit their young men. They let the Vietnamese bleed while they bled our young men. When the Soviet Union collapsed, the United States viewed itself as the one remaining superpower that claimed victory to the battlefield of the Cold War. Perhaps the casualties from the Cold War were not completely counted at the time of its end of hostilities. It is quite possible that one of the antagonists would die later from complications of its wounds. One of those complications could be Vietnam. It has remained an open wound in our history. We have failed in seeking some measure of closure to that war. As a veteran of that war, I am looking for a legacy. Harriet Beecher Stowe wrote a novel about slavery in America. Her book, Uncle Tom's Cabin, is often credited with lighting the abolitionist fuse in the North, subsequently leading to the most devastating war in American history. I am hoping that with the airing of the Ken Burns documentary on the Vietnam War, we can once again engage in a useful dialogue, one that is not bitter but can provide new insight and resolution. Perhaps it will serve a similar purpose to Ms. Stowe's novel and spark some constructive discourse, not retribution. I wrote an email to one of my closest friends Sunday night after the latest installment of the Ken Burns documentary. I made the comment that I was weary and didn't know why. The Ken Burns episode reminded me of all the things that were going on in what they considered the pivotal year of 1968. In that year, I met my friend when we were on a break from our classes at Shepherd Air Force Base. He was a staff sergeant cross-training into my career field, and I was a young airman third class. He is black, I'm white. That has never been an issue in almost a half-century of our friendship. Many people tend to look for differences and not commonalities. Did Vietnam amplify this? Again, I would like to thank ThinkTech Hawaii for allowing me to express my opinions here. It has been the intention of this program to enlighten those who had little or no knowledge of a conflict that has scarred us in so many ways. We have a lot of work ahead of us. This is not going to be easy. I leave you to ponder what the potential consequences could be if we continue to ignore the lessons of Vietnam. John F. Kennedy's words still ring out, not just for the generation that went to Vietnam, but the echoes still today. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Vietnam in the intervening years may have dampened that sentiment, but I am encouraged when I see convoys of trucks pulling boats headed towards Houston to rescue victims of the hurricanes. Complacency will not fix it. It's up to all of us to do something. Thanking me and my brothers and sisters in arms for our service is not enough. We need good citizenship, not thanks. Mahalo.